Hi, and welcome to the first in our series of metacognitive learning for parents. My name's Emma Childs and I am Head of Sixth Form at Saltash Community School. And over the next few sessions, I want to introduce you to some metacognitive strategies that will help you to understand how your child learns. First one is why it's okay to daydream, a parent's guide to the pinball machine theory of focus. So although this guide is designed to enhance your understanding of how best to support your children's learning, the theories detailed in this and subsequent guides are applicable to all neurotypical brains. The theory of the pinball machine is a metaphor from the book Learning to Learn, and it refers to the discovery that brains operate in two different modes, diffuse mode and focused mode when learning. So if you imagine your brain looks like a pinball machine, and I'm sure you're all familiar with what a pinball machine looks like, with the flippers at the bottom, you release the ball and you work frantically pushing the buttons on the side to make the flippers move really quickly so that the ball bounces up and between all of the bumpers. So focus mode refers to the brain when your child is concentrating really hard on something. For example, when they first learnt to tie their shoelaces, when they learnt their times tables, or now that they're a bit older, when they're learning to drive or play the newest version of Call of Duty. It's that scrunched up face concentration mode. In focus mode, the pinball travels really quickly around the board, rebounds on the bumpers many times and creates a trail of learning. So the trail is formed so that hopefully your child can access this particular learning again in the future. We'll talk about this more in the next few guides. But the flippers have to work really hard in this mode to keep the ball moving. And so this mode of thinking requires a lot of effort from your child, which means that they cannot maintain this concentration for extended periods of time. Eventually, the ball will fall through the hole into diffuse mode. As it's clear from the diagram, you can see that diffuse mode requires a lot less effort. The bumpers are further apart and the player can take a more relaxed approach to using the flippers to keep the ball on the game board. So because there are fewer bumpers, the flippers don't have to work as hard, you don't have to push the buttons as frantically. Diffuse mode is when your child is daydreaming or doodling or an activity that doesn't take much thought process, something that's well rehearsed and they don't need to think much when they're doing it. A quick note on focused mode in a child who has processing issues. So you'll notice that in this diagram there are holes, and researchers have suggested that students or children who have processing issues tend to have more holes on their pinball machine, which means it's harder for them to stay in focused mode because the ball keeps falling through the holes. So this might mean that they have to restart their learning more often, or they have to take more breaks. However, on the upside, it also argues that being able to switch more quickly between these modes when the ball falls through the pinball machine can result in greater creativity. Although contrasting, your child's brain loves both of these thinking modes, so it's really important that they can use diffuse mode and focused mode. But they need to learn how to switch between them effectively and appropriately. Sometimes being in focus mode doesn't mean that your child will get it. So if they're working on a problem, just focusing on it for long extended periods of time doesn't mean that they're always going to get it. They're not always going to understand it. So this can lead to frustration and fatigue, and you'll find that the pinball is flying around their brain, but the path isn't becoming clear. It's just frantically firing around there, pedaling the paddles really, really quickly, but something just isn't connecting, something's not making sense. So this will often lead to I'm stupid or I just don't get X subject speak, and you'll probably be familiar with this at some point. When this happens and your child has been focused for about 15 minutes, so try and expect them to maintain focus for between 10 and 15 minutes. Obviously, it completely depends on your child. You know your child better. Remind your child that their flippers are working too hard and then they need to switch to diffuse mode. So the purpose of switching to diffuse mode, it's because diffuse mode acts as your child's brain's screensaver. So when they focus on something else, the brain is still processing the learning done or the problem that they were trying to work out during focused mode, but it's now working on it in the background. So being in diffuse mode allows that thought ball to trail different paths and rebound against different bumpers in kind of a low stakes thought process that can help solve the problems faced when in focused mode. It's all about kind of standing back and getting a perspective on the problem that they were trying to work through in focused mode. So as mentioned previously, diffuse mode is an activity that your child can engage in where they don't require much thought process or much processing. So examples of these are playing instruments or engaging in a creative drawing activity, listening to music, talking to somebody, having a shower. Research suggests that neurotypical children should not spend longer than 10 minutes in diffuse mode before returning to focus mode during a learning session, otherwise it just becomes a big break. If your child struggles to return to focus mode following a diffuse episode, it's recommended that a routine is created to signal the transition between the two different modes. One way of doing this can be writing a list of things that need to be accomplished during the next focused mode, or something as simple as getting a glass of water and going and sitting in a certain chair to signal that you're going to go back to focused mode. Your child can switch in and out of these modes as often as necessary during a learning session, but it's important to try and ensure that the rule of 10 is monitored, give or take, depending on age and focus. So once they've focused for 10 or so minutes, then they can go into diffuse for 10 minutes. Sometimes your child will need to completely diffuse and seek additional support if they are really struggling with a topic. So if they've gone in and out of diffuse and focus mode and they're still not understanding what it is they're trying to do, it might be that they need to go and see their teacher the next day and just ask for a different way of learning it or for more support to get that information solidified. As with all metacognitive theory, some strategies will work much better than others, and your child will find their own ways of working best. Our aim is to equip you with a toolkit of strategies to support their learning, and hopefully you'll find this really informative over the next few sessions. Thank you for joining us.